Before we begin, I would like to start off with an apology, because I realized I was a huge dick in my last video, and I'm sorry about that. I lost my sense over something that wasn't even an issue until I brought it up, and I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I was a bit triggered when I shouldn't have been, and I'm sorry. Now tell me, is it tasteless for me to draw this girl? I don't know, but I'm gonna do it anyway. This is Tally. Tally keeps counts of how many people die in mass shootings. In America, specifically. Jackson came up with her after getting tired of always making the same arguments for America to institute better laws regarding gun control. In his own words, I could just copy-paste my previous thoughts on guns and related violence, and then the pro-gun crowd could copy-paste their usual responses, and we'd do the same dance as always. Fuck it. From this point on, I'm just going to have my little kill count girl keep tally for us. And because we know what's going to happen again, place your bets! How many are going to catch the bullets in the next shooting? Bonus points if you guess the right venue. And she's been going strong since February 2018 with 6 tallies in just over a year. This last one was February 16th, 2019, and considering there were 2 shootings earlier in the year, it feels like there should have been more by now, but we haven't seen any of her, so good job, America. She's among my favorite characters because Jackson does get involved with politics now and again, but usually he just makes fun of it. Tally is, despite her bodacious bod, see what a clever pun I did there, a bit of very serious criticism regarding how fantastically easy it is for people who shouldn't be trusted around firearms to get their hands on firearms in America. And addressing such a serious topic by presenting the number of dead by way of Ring Girl announcing the score is so deeply twisted. I love it, I love it, I love it. Moving on, you can't really study Jackson and just ignore his Kittyhawks. Monstrously muscular women with bodacious bods doing womanly wanton things with mini-men. And yes, I love alliteration. Would have been a great rapper, but I found metal instead. The Kittyhawks are pretty much exactly what they sound like. Anthropomorphic catwomen with extremely exaggerated brawn, strong enough to do pretty much whatever they damn well please. Or as the lycanthropic Sierra put it, they're gonna strut around like they own the place, cause guess what? They do. Among Jackson's many extravagant pinups, they are in a class of their own. Taller, curvier, stronger. And on this point, I'd like to return to what I said earlier about illustrating an idea and not reality. Half-human catwomen with enough muscles to rival Belgian blues don't exist. And if they did, it wouldn't be appealing, it would be terrifying. But that's not what Kittyhawks are about. Furries, at their most basic, are just human beings with animal bits. They're just normal people, really. And just like any drawing, the way they're drawn evokes ideas. In this case, it's about strength, pure and simple. Much as we try not to, we do judge by appearances. And a person having muscles don't just mean they're physically strong. It implies commitment, perseverance, energy, a lust for life, and many other things depending on the person watching, of course. And there are many kinds of strength. Strength of heart, strength of character, strength of mind, and the easiest way to illustrate strength is, of course, to make people look strong. It doesn't have to be specific. The idea of strength is the appeal, whatever you read into it. And these women aren't just strong, they're titans. Sometimes literally. So they give the idea not just of strength and sensuality, but strength and sensuality beyond all possible reality. And fantasies are all about the idea of something, not the reality of it. Back to what I was saying about style. Artists learn how to draw realistically first, and then they start stylizing for effect. You don't draw cartoony because you can't draw realistically, but knowing things like standardized proportions, forms and so on, lets you know how to draw for effect. In Jackson's case, that involves impossible proportions drawn with soft cursive lines and lighting. It's all about the way they're exaggerated. By exaggerating their muscles to the point of absurd, but still emphasizing their femininity, Jackson creates a very potent fetish fuel. A disproportionately small head makes the whole character look bigger. A more expansive chest area puts more emphasis on the breasts. Widening the shoulders, thickening the arms, it all adds to the impression of strength, and again, how you take it, it's really up to you. But then comes the question, if the appeal really is all about powerful women, why make it furry? For the same reason you make anything anthropomorphic. It's fun. The idea of talking animals is as old as time, and something about it triggers the imagination where rules no longer apply and anything is possible. Think about Christopher Nolan's Batman movies. They're very grounded and realistic compared to the comics and cartoons. Nolan wanted to make Batman movies everyone could enjoy without being ashamed, because at the time, superheroes were seen as pretty embarrassing. He did this by cutting away pretty much everything silly about the character, made the essentials believable, and focused on gritty reality. He was so concerned with making people take it seriously, he even had the Joker and Batman talk like they were anime characters, spouting motivation and pop psychology so people would definitely understand the complexities of the characters. I'm not having a go, the Nolan movies are fantastic. The point I'm making is, Nolan made it okay to enjoy Batman by making it more realistic. In doing so, he also stripped away the imagination and wonder of Batman, which works because it's Batman and he's supposed to be dark and gloomy, but it's also a lot less fun. Fantasy and imagination are usually seen as pretty childish, but to continue the superhero analogy, when the raccoon starts talking, you're allowed to enjoy what's about to happen, because it's not meant to be taken seriously, it's just fun. And Jackson's Kittyhawks works the same way. I don't think he makes them anthropomorphic with that purpose in mind, I think he does it just because he likes it, but that's the effect of it. For all their ridiculous proportions and overt sexuality, it's actually kind of innocent, even kind of cute with the right kind of eyes. It occurs to me, since I'm doing characters, I probably should have done Ellie. She's a regular Kittyhawk of Jackson's, a humongous black leopard girl that pops up now and again, while this is just a doodle he made for Comic-Con. I have a horrid confession to make. It's been so long since Jackson did Ellie, I completely forgot she exists until after I was done with these studies. Shame on me. But that's the way it goes sometimes. So I guess I'll just have to do a quick study. Elliot, or Eddie, I think is one of Jackson's first name given pinup girls, but I'm not sure. Jackson started drawing her as a way of learning how to draw muscles, and she was introduced in a pervy comic called Panther Panties, which is available on Jackson's online store, apsara.com. In the comic, her cat Mittens brought her an envelope in which lay a pair of panties, which, when worn, transforms her into a gigantic panther woman. Nothing overtly sexual happens, she just transforms into a Kittyhawk and the comic ends. Then she reappeared in a second comic where she played superhero, saving people from a burning building, and since then she has been pretty much just an occasional pinup Jackson does. When not being a 3-meter tall bit of fetish fuel, she works as an office temp, whatever that is. And much like any normal person, she mostly uses her powers for good, with a little bit of self-centeredness thrown in for good measure. Think of the Catwoman movie, only J-Lo actually turns into a cat, so the jokes work. And then throw the hook in. Cheesy cat puns and unintended calamities abound. I would enjoy seeing a longer comic with her, and Jackson has suggested she lives in the same city as Vicky from Little Victory. That's another comic of Jackson's, which can be purchased on Lulu and Amazon. But I haven't read it, so I don't know if she makes an appearance or not. That said, a crossover where Ellie rubs Sierra the wrong way and Vicky gets caught in the middle would be really cool to see. Sierra is a werewolf cop in a short horror action comic called Rundown, which can be purchased on Apsara. Ellie is well-meaning but careless, Sierra is ferocious and destructive, and Vicky is powerful but timid. It'd be like Captain America Civil War, but with hairy TNA. I'm gonna skip over a lot of Jackson's more salacious characters, like Chloe Sinclair or Helga, because I'd like a good long second run on YouTube before I'm shut down, but also because I don't want to just draw pinups. I don't mind it, but if I'm gonna do these master studies right, I don't want to limit myself to one aspect just because it's the most popular one. Besides, when it comes to artists who make their name with erotica, I believe sex draws people in, but substance is what has them staying. I thought I'd put more spotlight on my favorite of Jackson's comics, Sequential Art, and the characters therein. Sequential Art follows the zany adventures of Art and his 6 housemates, Cat, Pip, Scarlet, Amber, Jade, and Violet. It mixes comedy with science fiction and fantasy and nerd culture, and it can get quite surreal at times, and I love it so much. This is Arthur, but he's mostly called Art, and Art is the main character of the series. He's a concept artist for a marketing firm in Woking, Surrey, England, and appears to be a man of many hats. He has been known to design game characters, brand logos, and the occasional smutty commission on the side. And he may be a little bit inspired by Jackson himself, but I wouldn't go so far as claiming they're the same person. He's structured, laid back but excitable, opinionated, and can be a bit of a know-it-all at times. When something goes wrong, he gets angry about it before he breaks down, and would remedy the problem before giving up. Of course, that doesn't always work out, like when Microsoft pushes through an update he's avoided for years and he almost smashes the machine. Another time, he went to see Wreck-It Ralph with Kat and argued why references to old games are wasted on a kids' film where only the adults get the references. That went horribly wrong when he asked a random kid if he knew what a floppy disk is, and the kid told his mom the strange man wondered what a floppy dick is. He secretly got a thing for Kat, but there is very little focus on that beyond a occasional joke about how neither of them will own up to it. And it doesn't seem to be something Jackson is all that interested in pursuing. They're good friends with similar interests on a platonic level. It just so happens Kat is also hot, and Art notices. All in all, he's pretty normal, an anchor to reality for the surreal comedy to bounce off of. Between all of the characters, Art is the one most often Art is more often the butt of a joke, but he's adult enough to not take it lying down or blow it out of proportion when it's gone too far, especially when it comes to the Squirrel Girls, but more on them later. Catherine Vance, or Cat, is funnily enough a cat woman who lives with Art and Pip. Like Art, she's an artist, a photographer working at a local mall, and mostly does portraits and the like. Now and again she takes out her camera for some carefree nature photographs, and she's been published in a poetry anthology written by her college friend Vanity Fawn, of whom you can see a photo bash I made in another video. She's got a pet platypus called Leonard she got in a mystery box she bought online, and a long-standing enmity with a rabbit woman called Hilary Locke. I'm not entirely sure how furries work in the world of sequential art. They seem to be a common enough occurrence for people to not be freaked out by them, but every now and again a character does question their legitimacy, such as when Art tried claiming insurance after Pip, a penguin, set fire to their bathroom and the operator didn't believe him. Cat seems to counter the strangeness of being a furry by being the most normal of the characters. She often seems a bit more mature than Art or Pip, having to be a voice of reason for the both of them and the Squirrel Girls. When not at work, she reads fashion magazines and books, and plays video games, which makes it all the more fun when she does let loose and have a dozen cookies too many, or deal with the insanity that goes on in the comic. The only thing that really set her off down the path of crazy cartoon antics is the egomaniac bully Hilary Locke. She and Kat have been at each other's throats for years, since they were in kindergarten, with Hilary making it her hobby to push Kat down at any given chance, and whenever Hilary shows up, Kat completely loses her composure and becomes a vindictive 14-year-old. She's also attracted to Art, same as Art is to her, but I think it's mostly an extension of the joke. Art thinks she's hot, so she thinks Art's hot. There's very little chemistry between the both of them, at least nothing noticeable outside of a few comic strips where their attraction is the punchline of a joke. Like when Art saved her from being run over by a tank by opening a manhole cover, and she later on kissed him whilst covered in sewage, which was never brought up again and willfully ignored by Jackson. I'm not going to study Pip, because he's too cartoony. He's basically an egg with arms and feet, but I'd be remiss if I didn't briefly mention him. Pip's real name is Phillip McGraw, and he's a corrupt, unscrupulous arch-capitalist who lives together with Art and Cat. He's one of those characters that's difficult to get a grip on because most of the time he's not remarkably malicious or a saint. But Art and Cat are his friends, even if he can be hilariously self-centered. He works from home, buying cheap and selling steep on eBay, specializing in comics and memorabilia, but did once also sell dangerous technology he found in the tunnels beneath their house, which came back to bite him in the ass. But he did also get to tap some bunny ass, so it all worked out. And I will get back to that last bit later. The last member, or members, of the household are the Squirrel Girls, Scarlet, Jade, Amber, and Violet, with Scarlet being introduced fairly early in the comic. Originally, Art, Cat, and Pip were the only characters, but Pip found her in the attic, and because she's a bit simple, and at the time she was a bit butt naked, Cat made the executive decision to let her stay until they could figure things out. She claimed to be a scientist, but no one really believed that, since she talked and acted like a child, and she was fantastically naive about the world. However, when Art buys a prop gun at Comic-Con, Scarlet turns it into a functional energy weapon, cluing them in that maybe she wasn't crazy when she claims to be a scientist. In reality, Scarlet was actually part of an extremely intelligent think tank that monitored an intelligent computer for signs of corruption. Unfortunately, the computer had gained sentience and decided to get rid of Scarlet when she discovered severely corrupted code. And because she was away from the think tank, she could no longer focus her thoughts on anything for more than a few seconds. When trying to get back into the lab and warn the scientist, she gets distracted by something in Art, Cat, and Pip's attic and then becomes trapped in there. Because they take her in and treat her well, she either forgets or ignores her responsibility to get back to the lab and warn the scientists, but eventually her past catches up with her, and they're all dragged into an adventure parodying the Portal game series that may determine the fate of the Earth. For the second time. The other members of the think tank are Jade, Violet, and Amber, who all end up moving into the house after they save the world again. They're not as prevalent in the comics as Scarlet, so I mostly think of them as an extension of her. Also, not to insult their individual personalities, but they don't seem to have any individual personalities. They mostly exist for Scarlet to have someone to talk to, so I'll be keeping focus on Scarlet. Scarlet is consistently very innocent and short-sighted, to the point of seeming more like a child than a grown woman. For a bit, this seemed to be because she was away from the other Squirrel Girls, to whom she is psychologically bonded. In some strange way, they all share analytical abilities, and when they are separated, they can't focus or reason as well as they can when they're together. However, even after they were all reunited, they all continued acting like young girls, so it seems to be just who they are. Maybe it implies something about the way they were raised. Maybe the scientists put so much emphasis on their brain power they never really matured. I don't think that's how it works, but it's the best I can guess. In addition to having the personality of a child, Scarlet is also frightfully intelligent. Her and the other Squirrel Girls' accomplishments includes a functional death ray, the world's most powerful growth hormone, power armors, a lawnmower capable of warp speed, perpetual motion slinkies, a time machine, bubble technology, and things I can't even remember because there's been so much. So yeah, a lot of the comic's weirdness comes from these four. Most of the time, if they're not the cause, they're the solution. This contradiction between immaturity and intelligence is pretty hilarious most of the time, but Scarlet and the other girls can be just as self-centered and manipulative as a child. It's not an aspect that comes out very often, but when it does, it can be quite scary with its implications. The most obvious example would be the time Scarlet became infatuated with the king of a magical fantasy realm, who, in return for helping him save the kingdom, promised to help her clean the tunnels under the house where she and the other girls live. Now, because she was infatuated with him, and she and the other girls made sure the tunnels were always dirty, so he would never leave. And when Cat and Art found out about this, Scarlet threatened to flash boil every cell in their bodies while they slept if they'd tell the king. So Scarlet and the girls are a mixed bag of nuts that just keeps on giving. Adorably childish, chaotically intelligent, and just when you think you have them all figured out, Jackson gives them a little bit of a psychopathic edge. I really like these four, but weirdly they're not my favorite characters. Actually, that would be the pathologically narcissistic bully Cat hates, Hilary Locke. I will always love a good bad guy more than any fantastic good guy, but the funny thing is, it wasn't until very recently she became my favorite Sequential Art character. In the beginning, it was clear Jackson didn't have much of a plan with her. She was introduced just out of convenience for the sake of a few jokes, and through most of the comics she's just been an occasional irritation for the characters more than a proper antagonist. I don't even think of her as an antagonist now, but she's so amazingly spiteful and sadistic, I squealed with glee at the conclusion of her latest game. And on bad guys, by the way, I don't believe in good and evil in real life, but in fiction it's always fun to see a proper conflict between whatever the story denoted as right and wrong. However, in recent years the idea of inherent evil has been pushed further and further away by the collective understanding that most people who do bad things usually have a reason for it. They could have become morally malformed by an abusive environment, they could be fighting for a better world at the expense of this one, and sometimes there is no bad guy or even a conflict at all. All of this is largely correct, I think. No one does anything if they believe it's wrong, and the world is too complicated to say everything bad going on is because some people are just evil. But I really miss the kind of bad guy who does evil things for no other reason than that's who they are. On the other hand, these kinds of villains are usually lacking depth, and they usually come off more as caricatures of themselves, and that's no good either. Hilary Locke is a perfect blend of the spectrum. Let's turn back the clock, say, a decade or two, to Denton Brook Junior School. A young girl happily struts along, proud as a peacock about her new pink pony lunchbox. She's the only one who'll have one, and all the kids will think she's so cool and want to be her friends. And then, a cold shiver runs down her spine as she spots another girl with the same lunchbox. She would have one? She would steal her spotlight? No one will like her now, no one will care because she has the same lunchbox. And so the little girl quickly runs up and shoves the other girl before running away. Holy crap, is that petty. And actually very believable. To have no social skills or confidence in yourself to the point of thinking you need things to brag about for people to like you, I think we can all recognize that in one way or another from when we were kids. Childhood has a tendency to form who we become later in life, and what makes Hilary Locke different is while we all, hopefully, grew out of it, she let it define her. Hilary believes her material assets and social status is what makes her loved, and she's threatened by Cat because she's beautiful and kind and people like her even without Cat trying. This small event is just a sapling, it's the start of a feud between Cat and Hilary, and a whole school life is more than enough formative years to turn a confused kid into a conniving harpy. There's still more to it though. At the start of the comic, Hilary works for a ladies' underwear company in some sort of managerial position. But later on she loses her job, and out of desperation she ends up taking a position at a thrift store. Coincidentally, Pip happens to need a job at the time as well, and ends up working for her. When Cat drops by to eat lunch with Pip and sees Hilary in this humiliating state, she quietly breaks apart after they leave. When Pip returns, he finds her bawling her eyes out about how she's fallen and there isn't one person who gives a damn about her. And before her head can clear, she ends up taking him to bed. Yeah. This is the start of the most emotionally devastating arc of sequential art, but it's also among the more interesting things that I have seen done in comics. I have seen villains beaten, I have seen villains return, but I have never seen a villain broken first thing, gotten context for their character, and then seen them pick themselves up, brush the dust off, and return right back to being villains. It's usually a teaching moment that develops their character in a new way, but instead this arc just reaffirms Hilary as a villain. It's freaking amazing! What happens is, after Hilary sleeps with Pip, she starts pretending to like him, much to the frustration of both Art and Cat. They both try telling him she's obviously playing him for some reason, but in the beginning, it's not entirely clear why she would bother pretending to like this 3-foot-tall nerdy potato. It turns out, by making him believe they're a couple, Hilary convinces him to do her work at the thrift store for her. While he's doing that, she is networking with people in the fashion industry, sleeping with all of them until they give her contacts needed to find a new job closer to the one she lost. No idea why she waited until now to do this, seeing as she was unemployed for a year, but it seems she did take some pride in her work and tried getting it back with some of her credentials. This is how she gets away with it. On date night, when she and Pip are about to watch movies before bed, She roofies him, sleeps with the contacts, and in the morning when Pip can't remember anything, she pretends they were in bed together all night. Pip, being an antisocial nerd who has never been with a woman this gorgeous for his entire life, genuinely believes she cares for him, and it's hilariously heartbreaking to see Hilary manipulate him like this. And to top it all off, when she finally finds a new manager position, she hands Kat the key to the store where Pip is waiting for her, and then just walks out of their lives, leaving Kat to deal with Pip as Hilary throws him away. Oh my god, I love this bitch so much! I'm really curious where Jackson is going with her in the future. For one thing, she and Pip technically hooks up again, but it seems a lot less emotional this time, and I'm not sure sex is involved. Probably money. After a misunderstanding regarding an internet ad that said, "Footstool wanted," Pip enters a BDSM relationship with Hilary, where she uses him for a footstool. Not sure why, considering she can do far better than Pip, but I assume it's about power and control. Pip did willingly return to her despite what she did towards him, and if that doesn't scream perfect slave, I don't know what does. Besides that, the both of them are pretty similar. I doubt Jackson is actually going to make them a real couple in the future, but as Art put it, is it really so inconceivable that a relentless, petty, manipulative bully and a corrupt, unscrupulous arch-capitalist might strike up a relationship? And that was another master study of Phillip Jackson, and I really need more practice. Of course, this is not a demonstration of a finished product. I did record this the first time I drew from these specific drawings, but the fact that I didn't properly study Jackson I think shows quite clearly. That's to be expected when I only studied one drawing per character before trying to emulate, and as soon as I hit a snag when I was no longer sure how Jackson would have drawn a thing, I regressed to my own most basic understanding of how anything is drawn. The line work is awful, and it's one of my weakest points, but I also couldn't make the proportions and style consistent. Nevertheless, I think I largely managed to give the impression of Phillip Jackson. You can tell what I was going for, even if it's not convincing emulation, and good enough, and that's good enough for me at this stage. I had a lot of fun doing these studies. It's been a long while since I did properly draw, and Jackson's combinations of swooping lines and deep shapes is always a treat to look at. I will probably do something like this again in the future, and I'll try studying a few more drawings rather than just go with one and hope it goes well. I should probably work on my own speed as well, which has taken a major hit since I left art school and realized I didn't have to stress to bits about drawing anymore. And hopefully this will all lead to something really cool. Thanks for watching, and I hope you see me again. Bye!